Okay, welcome back to Database School. I'm your host, Aaron Francis, and today, first time ever, we have two guests on the show. So it's growing. It's growing exponentially. It's going to be a lot of fun here. So we have Monica and Tudor here from Xata, and Monica is the founder of Xata, and Tudor's the CTO. And so we're going to hopefully dive in super deep about how they met, how it got started, all the stuff that they're doing, and I'll let Monica describe what Xata is and introduce herself, and then Tudor, we can throw it to you. So Monica, welcome.
Yay. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be able to be part of the show.
Hey, I'm Tudor. I'm CTO of Xata. Nice to meet everyone.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So Monica, tell us, but we'll dive in later. Give us the one sentence, two sentence pitch for what is Xata.
Yeah, so what we are building is a Postgres database platform for developers. By a Postgres database platform, we mean that it's a fully managed Postgres service completed with additional features that kind of help developers build applications faster and also achieve performance at scale. And our focus currently is basically schema changes and providing a best developer workflow for our developers. So we have been building this open source project called PG Roll that offers zero downtime reversible schema changes. And our other key differentiations are basically major version upgrades. We also have a story that basically synchronizes the data from Postgres to Elastic or a search engine to kind of provide an extensive full text search capability. And yeah, basically what we are working is we have a few open source projects, PGRoll, like I said, for zero downtime schema migrations. We also have PGStream that basically the idea is that you have Postgres is your source of truth, and then you want to replicate data from Postgres to other data stores. For now, we support OpenSearch and also webhooks, where we are planning to add other data stores. And also we have PGCX, which basically is our framework to develop extensions in Postgres in Zig.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things that I want to get to a little bit later is all of the open source work y'all are doing, because all of that stuff you just described, you have open source work on, and it's just out there for people to use, which I think is super awesome. But you did mention Elastic, and I think both of y'all worked at Elastic. So Tudor, can you tell us about your background, and is that where y'all met? Because I feel like you were both ex-Elastic, so tell us that story.
We are both ex-Elastic, but actually we have met way before that. We did join Elastic together because we were, me and Monica, Xata is kind of our second company. The first company that we started was called Packetbeat, and this was an Elastic acquisition. We joined Elastic in 2015. There's quite some time since then. And yeah, me and Monica are actually husband and wife, and we have met way back in Romania a few years before all that happened.
There you go. Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense then. So, what was this first company that got acquired by Elastic? What were y'all doing there?
It was an open source monitoring tool. It was called Packetbeat because we were using packet capture and then getting observability data out of it. So, for example, you could install this on a server that was running MySQL or PostgreSQL or something like this, and we were parsing the protocol and getting the information from the actual protocol. And the same for HTTP and other protocols that we are supporting. Is what... go ahead, Monica.
So basically what we were building is open source project, was called Packetbeat, and we were using Elasticsearch to basically store all the basically the data, and then we decided to use Kibana, which was an open source, is still an open source a project that basically visualizes all the data. So this is with this kind of, we were able to provide an open source full end-to-end monitoring experience for our users. So I started Packetbeat, and then Tudor joined me a year or 2 years after, or a year and a half afterwards. And then soon after we joined forces with Elastic, and we had an amazing opportunity there to kind of grow the monitoring team, and kind of in addition to kind of looking at the network traffic, we started to collect other types of data, like for example metrics and logs, in order to provide a better insights to our users. So basically this kind of became the observability that, as it was called back then, basically similar with what Datadog, for example, provides nowadays.
Gotcha. And so you created this company, you get acquired, you're in Elastic, probably having a nice time in Elastic, having just been acquired. What possessed y'all to say, we should go start a database company? That sounds fun and easy and carefree. What did you look at out in either the market or your life or what, that you decided this is what we want to do next? Hey, we'll get back to the interview in just 1 second, but since you're here, you like databases, you probably like Postgres. Let me tell you about Mastering Postgres. This is a course that I am teaching coming out October 15th. This is a way that you can master the most important part of your stack, your database. So go to masteringpostgres.com and sign up to hear when we release it. Okay, back to the interview.
Yeah, so it was again me. So I left Elastic after 5 or 6 years, and I started this non-profit organization that offers mentorship for underrepresented groups in tech. And my idea was, basically to help as many people as possible. We've seen that the tech environment is not as easy on developers, especially the ones that are coming from underrepresented groups. And basically my goal with this nonprofit was kind of to connect mentors with mentees and kind of support each other. And when we were building this mentorship platform, this is something that me and Tudor and a few others were building. We realized that databases are still not as easy as to be used as we expect it to be. So in our entire career, we're working in the monitoring space, and we've seen on the other side of the table how to push data and kind of push databases to the limit. And basically we realized that, building applications, it's much more complicated than you would expect in 2020, and I think that companies should be able to spend more resources on building the applications itself instead of building a database platform. And this is what kind of made me decide build another company. Was not really the idea, but I found there is an opportunity in the space, so that's why I decided to start Xata.
So this story aligns very much with my experience, where you have an idea and you're doing a thing, and while you're doing that thing, you're noticing all of the things that I need to do the thing that I actually want to do are very hard. And so I'm going to go focus on building, the infrastructure to make this thing easier. And I find that people are always like, oh, I don't have any ideas, or I'm just looking for a problem. And I'm like, just literally start anything, and the ideas, the problems will present themselves. And so it sounds like that's exactly what happened.
And you are like, someone should really work on this. Too bad I don't have the time, right? Exactly.
Once you're working on something, you see all the problems, you're like, I can't work on all of it. So you're doing this nonprofit. Tudor, are you still at Elastic at that point while she's building up the nonprofit?
Yeah, I was still at Elastic at that point.
So she's I just love this story so much. So she's building up a nonprofit. You're at Elastic, and she comes to you and she's like, babe, we're doing it again. We're starting another company. How did that happen, and what did you say?
Yeah, I guess I have a thing for projects at the beginning, I can hardly resist someone coming to with an idea to me, to not think about what it could be and how we could do it and what to reach it. I just love that part of it, like the beginnings of everything. And I also in Elastic, I actually was kept looking for new projects to do and things, to start and so on. So it's just, I have a thing for that. And then of course when, especially if it's Monica that tries to convince me to do something, that she's usually, she tends to be successful in that.
Yeah, I think so. And, you're married, so there's some sort of like marital, requirement there that you say, yes, honey, let's do it. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, the real story is like this. So I started Xata, and then, I managed to get 2 rounds of funding, and then I think I even raised, Tudor joined after I raised the first round, but I think before I raised the Series A, and Tudor went back to Elastic, and he said like, I need to leave, and they were trying to convince him to stay longer, and he said, I cannot really stay, like I have a duty to my wife, and I need to, and
Smart
from
man.
my point
Good
of
job,
view,
Tudor. Yeah.
and from my point of view, I think in my opinion, Tudor, putting this on the side that we are married, but the reality is that Tudor is the best CTO that I know over there. And he's, you always want the best person for the job. And I think this has this unique combination of, have a very good technical person, but also very good with having a feeling what the future might look like, and product-oriented person, which I think is very hard to get from a technical person.
This is the best. You guys are adorable. Okay, so Monica, you're out there on your own raising money. Where in the world are y'all located? And this was in what, 2020, 2021 that you were raising?
Yes, for Xata was. So I started the company at the end of 2020. So it was we were in the pandemic times, in lockdown. So it was kind of hard to even start the company on the legal side of things. So it took much longer than I expected. So basically, kind of in the middle of 2021, we started basically. I hired the first employee, and we also had the first investment, the seed round, in middle of July 2021.
Okay, and
but
so
it was
you've
just
done
me
seed.
at the side.
Yeah, so you've done seed and Series A. How far have you gone into the funding now? Have you raised another round since then?
No, we didn't raise another round. So with the Series A, we raised at the beginning of 2022, but we didn't raise any other rounds since then. We have quite many years of runway, so we are not raising another round for now.
That's incredible. And I looked at, I've looked at your team's page, and y'all's team is growing, and you're currently hiring, and this is amazing. Congratulations. This is very cool.
Thank you. We are not a big team, but... Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You.
I was just gonna say. So, what was when you hired this first person? What was your initial offering to the market? So, what did you come out of the gate saying? Like, we have hosted Postgres, or was it something different than that? And like, how did you even get a foothold on the database hosting market so that people would start trusting y'all with giving you their most important asset, which is their database? How did you even convince people to do that?
Actually, the initial pitch was a bit different. So the way I was pitching is that imagine a database that it's so easy to use for developers, and it's somewhere between a traditional database and Airtable. So you kind of get this functionality, because during my work with this nonprofit organization, we really used Airtable. So we are building a solution on top of Airtable, and we really liked this spreadsheet-like UI, and I think this was really important to kind of see and manage the data in a visual way. So I wanted to apply all this experience that you as a user have with Airtable to a traditional database. Because the idea is that you don't have to be a developer that needs to understand the internals of a database in order to manage one in production. So this kind of the initial pitch was, and after speaking with lots of people, initially basically I wanted to build the whole database on Elasticsearch, because theoretically you can achieve all the functionality that I wanted only from that. And after speaking with quite many people, now in the end we realized that we want to build a solution on top of Postgres and Elasticsearch. Why Elasticsearch? Because you get this full text search, an extensive full text search experience, and this I think is very important when you have an application. And I think applications nowadays really suffer from a really nice full text experience. So I wanted to bring this to all the applications. So that's why this was kind of the first functionality that I wanted to bring on top of the databases.
I like that. So your vision from the beginning was platform. It wasn't just hosted database. It was, let's build a platform that application developers need, including the database, but also importantly at the very beginning, including full text search, which you guys were super familiar with at that point.
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, and so then Tudor, when did you come in that kind of technical story, and what was your first, like when you came in, when your lovely wife convinced you to quit your job and come do another company, what did you come in and tackle first? Like, where was the product when you showed up, and what was that like coming in kind of after it had already started?
Mm-hmm. The product was definitely at the beginning, I would say, like POC level. Mm-hmm. I think we had like a few friendly users on the platform, but we haven't opened up to any real external people. So it was at the beginning, and I think it was that's when it was still only like Elasticsearch based. And then we looked into like the functionality that we wanted to have, the data model that we want to support. But also some of not only the data model, but also we had we had this vision that a database should be like an Airtable or like like a Notion page or a Notion database these days. You create it, you add your data into it, and then if you leave it and come back in 2 years' time, your data it's still there and it still works, and you're not nervous that maybe my instance had shut down.
It's a pretty important aspect. You want the data to still be there.
Right. So we wanted to offer this also to as many people as possible. So there's actually quite a difficult set of requirements. But one of the things that back then when we said, okay, we do need a relational database and something like Postgres and such, was that in the data model that we wanted to support relationships. Pretty natural. You can do relationships, like in NoSQL stores as well. Like this. There's a lot of literature on how to do that, but for what we wanted to do, it was not a natural fit. So that's why we said, okay, we're going to introduce Postgres. Back then, it was still kind of like an implementation detail, if you want, because we were offering our own API on top of it and our own SDKs and such. But that's kind of how we welcome Postgres into Xata, and since then we're kind of moving more and more into Postgres.
Mm-hmm. And so at that point, how much experience did you have being like a Postgres DBA? Or is this something you had to learn on the fly? Because I understand implementing it as an implementation detail probably protected you from like the full surface area of Postgres, because it was kind of hidden behind your APIs and SDKs and that sort of thing. But suddenly, I mean, you have tons of experience with Elastic, you both do, but suddenly you're now a proper Postgres DBA. Was that terrifying, or is that something you had done before?
I have done parts of it before, and yeah, like it was MySQL. In one of the monitoring products. I was in the monitoring space before Packetbeat, and there we were using MySQL, but we were pushing it quite a bit to the limits. And back then, there was this constant MySQL versus Postgres debate, sort of thing, and there were times when we would have liked to switch to Postgres, if you want. So I had some DBA type of experience, but not exactly on Postgres, and not all that much of it. So yeah, it was definitely a little bit scary.
I'm sure that sounds terrifying. Good for you. So you're at this point where Postgres is now in the stack, somewhat as an implementation detail. Is this the point where I think it's PG Stream? Is that the name of the one that does the data capture?
Yeah.
Okay. So is this the point where PG Stream comes into existence, or when does this open source work start that takes the Postgres data and puts it into Elastic, and the platform begins to coalesce around this?
So the technology, the PG Stream technology, let's say, did exist back then in Xata. It's one of the, kind of like one of the first things that we did, but it was not separated in an open source project.
Gotcha.
And the PG Stream open source project actually is quite new. We just released it maybe in May this year. Yeah,
that's exciting. I didn't know that.
It's relatively new. But as I said, the actual code and technology, we have been using internally for quite some time by that point. And it's the reason we open source it has more to do with our overall open source strategy. We did discuss it, we could kind of flip the switch and make everything open source. But that's actually, you are open source, but in a way that's really hard to deploy for people, because they would have to do everything that we're doing. And we know it's hard for us, so for a third party or someone else, it would be like next to impossible to keep everything running and so on. So we thought a most honest way of doing open source is to let's separate the key functionality that we have, make them useful on their own as open source projects, be independent, so you don't have to use everything. You can use only PG Roll or only PG Stream or other things that we're planning. You can use them individually. That's much easier to adopt. But if you want to have all of them in one cohesive platform, then probably Xata is the best choice for you. So that's kind of that's the thinking behind it.
Yeah, that's I like that as a strategy, because sometimes you will see companies say, "Hey, you can host it yourself," and you look at the requirements to host it yourself, and you're like, "I not only need to be a DevOps expert, I need 3 other DevOps experts to help me run this thing." Yeah. So, Monica, tell me this open source philosophy. Where did this come from, and why did y'all decide to go down this route? Because open source is amazing and wonderful, but it also is a lot, you have to do a lot. You have to manage a community, you have to manage repos, you have to maintain codes of conduct. There's just a lot of work with open source. So what is it about Xata, or potentially about the two of you, that you decided, hey, open source is going to be one of our strategies?
Yeah, so definitely we have been in the open source space for a really long time, and I've seen the power of building a community with Packetbeat, where basically at that point in time, we didn't have to do any marketing or anything. We build a community in much easier. It's not similar nowadays because there are so many open source projects, but I still think that it's important to have an open source story, especially when you are selling to developers. So I knew from the beginning when I built Xata that I want to have an open source story, but I was not sure how that will be. And at the beginning when you're starting a company, you kind of need to figure out multiple things, how you position yourself, what kind of functionality you need to build. So that's why I was trying to postpone that moment. And then when it was kind of clear for us that we are building this platform with this functionality, it was kind of a more natural decision that, we are building one open source project that is solves a specific pain point that people have with Postgres, and they work against a native Postgres. And I think, for larger companies that they are not interested or they are not allowed to run any closed source projects or any SaaS offering, for them it will be important to be open source. But I know for most of the people, they also want to have a web interface or AI story, a UI story around it, and then maybe it fits better if you're using the open source story part of a SaaS offering. So I think with this idea, basically with the open source story that we have, we can kind of tackle all sizes. All companies of all sizes. So for example, we can tackle the builders with our free generous plan that we put so much effort into this like we have the goal that we don't want to spend more than $2 per customer. And then with the SaaS offering for SMBs, and then for large organizations that they are very strict with running open source, we can collaborate on them with other open source projects. So this is something that while I was at Elastic, we had basically the Beats, the Beats team. This is the name of the project we were working on, and there we had a strong collaboration with eBay, and because of our open source strategy, they were able to collaborate with us, and kind of we were able to test our Beats, these agents that we mentioned at a large scale, because eBay has a much larger scale that you cannot really have a way to test this internally. So I think it's important to have collaboration with larger companies, because one is helping you test your product, but also kind of you can hear about their needs and kind of move the product in a direction that otherwise it maybe will be difficult for you to see this going towards.
See, this is really smart to me. This is very interesting, because I think a lot of people, potentially, yes, myself included, think open source is great for like the makers, the builders, the people who are just starting up, and you're like, I'm gonna pull some stuff off the shelf and put it together, and what a great community we have. This is awesome. As an individual, I can build stuff, right? That's true. But what you're explaining is something that I haven't really thought about. That's also not the world that I live in, these big enterprise companies. But it gives you kind of a foot in the door and gives you a little bit of credibility. So like you were describing with eBay, they get to use some of your open source work, become familiar with you and your brand, trust the quality of the things that you're producing, potentially even start to get support from you on that open source thing. And that makes the entire commercial adoption ramp a lot smoother versus, hey, we're just these people off the street and trust us, we're good. It's like, no, we have this long history that you've been working with this tool, and now you're kind of evaluating this other commercial tool that we have. That is very smart, Monica. Well played.
Yes, and I also think it's important. I think you can succeed as a company if you have a big community, and you can achieve a big community not only by addressing builders, but different types of companies and sizes. And so that's why, that was the idea initially as well.
So let's stay on PG Stream then. Tudor, tell me, what else are you, either Xata proper, like internal companies, or what are you seeing other people use PG Stream for? Because I imagine it opens some really interesting use cases, and I would love to hear like what people are doing with this. I'll read the tagline so the listener knows: Postgres replication with DDL changes. And so tell us, what are people using this for out in the wild?
Yeah, so the most common use case, the one that we use internally, and that's the most polished for now, is the replication to Elasticsearch or OpenSearch. And it does this, like, logical replication comes with a set of gotchas in Postgres. And then on the other side, on the Elasticsearch side, there's there's a number of things that you need to do in order to have performant replication, and more importantly, actually be correct, because you can have lots of inserts and updates and deletes, different order and so on. If you want to scale, you might process them in a different order. Elasticsearch internally might reorder messages and such. So you need to be careful on how to do it such that what you see on the Postgres side is exactly what it is on the Elasticsearch side as well. And that's what we, that's what we did and improve over time in PG Stream. Now that part can be, that can be applied to other outputs as well. And we're looking to support other things, let's say other output plugins as well, especially things like S3, like Iceberg, these sort of things, ClickHouse. Although ClickHouse now has a pretty good technology internally, so we'll see if if it wouldn't be more smart to just tell people to use theirs, and other such outputs. There is one other interesting use case, which is for webhooks. It's something that we added kind of more like just an example output, how to write an output. But there's
people were like, I want that. I want to use webhooks, right?
yeah, exactly. Because it's a simple way of calling these webhooks whenever there's a change in Postgres, and that can be on the data side, but also on schema changes like adding a column or removing one or changing something about it. And you get called a webhook, and then you can have your Lambda process it or do whatever you want with it.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds awesome. The webhook use case just obviously opens up the entire universe, which is very cool. Right. So that is that's PG Stream, and then there's PG Roll. So when did PG Roll come along, and tell us kind of how PG Roll, what it is and how it works?
Right. So PG Roll, it's open source for 1 year now. We actually just realized the other day that we have first published it 1 year ago. And it's a zero downtime, like online schema changes tool for Postgres. And the way it works is actually, we think, pretty novel and interesting. And I can describe it quickly. The idea is...
Describe it quickly or slowly. You can go into as much detail as you want, Tudor. We've got time.
Okay, that's great. So our idea is to offer both the old version of the schema and the new version of the schema at the same time to the application. So that if you do a rolling update of your application, the application can say, okay, I'm at this version, so it gets served that version of the schema. And the new version of the application will see the new one at the same time, right? Because otherwise you have to do this, and this is what everyone does today, you have to do changes in a backwards compatible way,
right.
Schema changes in a backwards compatible way, and have some sort of compatibility code in your code base, right. To be, like if this column, if we are at this version, use this column, otherwise do something else or use this other column.
There's like a whole, I think it's like 6 or 7 or 8 steps of how you're supposed to do, like change the code, you change the schema, change the code, exactly. Change the code, change the schema. It's a whole mess. Yeah. So this sounds interesting. Keep going.
Right. So, and now how do we accomplish that? And behind the scenes, we use hidden columns. So we would, let's take an example. Let's say you want to change the type of a column. You have it as an integer, and you want to change it to be to a string or the other way around. We would add a hidden column with a new name, like underscore PG roll, and then the name of the original column, and then we will start backfilling the data, applying any data conversion that you might have defined. And you can do that with SQL expressions. So, if you want to change from int to string, that's pretty easy, and the other way around. But you might also do things like, I don't know, I have a name column and I want to split it in last name and first name and last name, you can also do that via SQL expressions. And we would backfill the data for you in this column. But at the same time, we create these views, and we create a view in which the column is mapped to the one in the physical schema, and then another view in which the column is mapped to this hidden column that we're backfilling, right? So then the application can choose, okay, which one do I want to use, which view I want to use. And that's done in Postgres. We group this in schemas, Postgres schemas. So you select your version by setting the search path. You set the search path,
Smart.
like your CI tool would take the version and put it into a little bit of code, and you select your search path, and that gives you the right schema where we are. That's high level how it works.
That is exceedingly clever. I have to admit, I have never heard, because everything I have heard, we talked about schema changes is that 6-8 whatever step process where a lot of the mental labor comes back onto the developer, which is fine. We used to not have any safe schema changes at all. So we're one step better. But this reminds me. What does this remind me of? Stripes API, right? So you can just say for Stripes API, you can say I'm version 2020-10-13, and you're like, I'm using the October 13th version of the API, and somehow it just always works. And then with y'all, it's like you're saying that by setting the Postgres search path, and so that's determining where it looks first, you can say I'm using the old version or the new version of the schema. And then what happens? What's the final completion step? At some point, do you just drop the ghost or the old stuff and do a whole switch out, and then everything's clean and PG roll is out of the picture until the next time around? Yeah,
in PG roll terminology, you complete the migration because for now, to keep things simple, you can only do this one at a time. So in order to move to the next schema change, you have to complete the previous one. But it makes sense to complete it whenever you have tested. Whenever you have tested your new application and you mark, okay, this is now done. You complete it, and then we delete the whatever temporary columns we might have used. And the views. Now the view of the version would still be in place. At least that's how it works now. It's possible to also remove the views. Some, some customers are not very comfortable with having this view all the time. So then we remove it, make it in the physical schema, and from then on everything works normal without the intermediate step. So we do it for the minimum amount of time. But there is definitely this complete step.
And you can also roll back. I think that's also important to say. For example, for whatever reason you realize that the change is not good enough, that you can also roll back, and then as if nothing has happened. In your
the rollback is
pretty
super
important.
quick.
Yeah, pretty important. As much as we like to think that we'll catch it all in tests or just using our powerful brain, it is pretty important to be able to roll back pretty quickly. Yeah. And that's a very fast process, you said, Tudor?
Yeah, because we're basically just dropping the temporary columns and the extra views, and then everything is back at the beginning. The process of backfilling will take some time. But we also, can rate limit that and do it slowly so that it never impacts too much your production database. But if at any point before completing you realize, something is not right, you can always roll back and it's in an instant as it was before you started. I think it's a pretty big advantage.
This is pretty cool. You two are quite clever. So I want to talk about. So I understand the origins of like Elastic coming out of the nonprofit and coming from your background, and that was kind of like the core thing. And then Postgres came in. The one thing that I found super clever was the blob storage. So tell me, where did that come from? From a product side, who decided, hey, it'd be nice to be able to throw some giant files in here and have them end up on, a proper blob storage place? What was the product decision on that before we get to technical?
I think this was our initial feature, and this is basically inspired from Airtable. The ideas like wouldn't really be cool to kind of upload images in your in this spreadsheet-like UI as if you do this in Airtable, and this was kind of the initial idea. Was companies, they so the goal of this feature and other features that we are building was we want to minimize the time developer are spending in building the application. And this is one of them. So in order to support images in your application, you need to kind of build a custom solution, and a similar way full text search. So this is what triggered me, because we've seen at Elastic, every other company is building the same database platform. They have like a relational database, and they have to synchronize the data from a relational database to Elastic Search, and this is not an easy operation because you need Kafka. It kind of basically complicates, and my idea was like, why every company out there needs to reinvent the wheel when we can provide all this functionality out of the box? And this was kind of the the idea behind the images as well, which makes really good demos.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, because I think every developer that's ever built image upload never wants to do it again, and every user wants image upload everywhere. They're just like, hey, can I throw an image here? And you're like, why? No. So that makes sense to me, that the origin story is still like, let's make a proper Airtable like experience with a little bit more power and controllability under the hood. So the technical aspect of it is interesting to me. So from like an actual technical perspective, do these blobs end up on, is it specifically S3? And then what's left behind in the Postgres database? Is it just a pointer?
Right. So it's they are stored in S3. They are actually served through the Cloudflare CDN as well, which does caching, which has some advantages, and it's also where we can perform image transformations. So it's not cool. Only it's a little bit like Cloudinary. Not only you can request an image, but you can request it at a certain resolution and size and so on.
So you have blob storage plus CDN plus transformations.
Right, yes. Yes, that's all in the file attachments features. And what we store in Postgres is indeed basically like it's a JSON field with this metadata, like more or less a URL to where it is. But we do have this ability of creating signed URLs. Because the point of doing this, like you could of course do it yourself as well, upload it somewhere, store the URL in the database, and that's more or less it. What we wanted to do a little bit extra is to make sure that if you have access to a database row, then you would have access to the images in it, but not other images, right? And to do that securely. So that's where we have this notion of signed URLs, that it's a temporary URL that you get, and that gives you access to the S3 through the CDN. So it's also cached. There's no performance penalty in doing this. And those signed URLs expire. So it gives you access to the files, but only for some period of time. And you can get another one if you need it. That's the like the extra stuff we do beyond just putting the URL there. And then there's also, like, for example, cleanup. That's also because if you do this yourself, you delete the row in the database. You cannot cascade delete to S3, right? So you have to do that in your application. In our case, we actually
which never
do that
happens, by the way. Those files just get left behind forever.
They're just left around. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is very clever. So tell me, between amongst all of these features that the Xata platform offers, when people come to y'all, when customers come to y'all, or the customers that you currently have, what is it that they are most like? What are they looking for? Like, why are they so excited? Because as a technical person, I'm listening to you talk and thinking, this is incredible. Like, this is so clever. This is so genius. But from a business perspective, what do people come to y'all for primarily?
Yeah, and this is where we kind of separate a little bit through the personas that we're serving. And like we were discussing before, there's this builder's persona that would, like it would typically use something like Next.js, deploy on Vercel or Netlify, indie hackers, non-profits, all these people. They like this wealth of functionality, and the fact that they can develop quickly by using these features, especially people that realize when they're planning their application, well, I'm going to need search, I know already, and I'm full text search, and I know I want to store files. So then, they see Xata and say, okay, this is the perfect match, is what I need. Has this functionality built in. I don't have to worry about it's a serverless database. So like they worry about keeping it up and so on. It's a really good match, right? Then when you're going to more companies and teams type of personas, they're less interested in this type of functionality, and they are a lot more attracted by our schema changes functionality. So what we do with PG role. Branching and schema changes.
Safety.
The safety of it and the replication to other different data stores. So PG stream. We also have some more nice things in the data platform. One is that you can move your Postgres database, your logical Postgres database, let's say, you can move it from one instance to another, from one physical Postgres cluster to another. And you can do that just from the UI, you just move.
Cool.
You kind of like take your bags and everything and move to this other one. And that actually turns out to be quite useful for things like major version upgrades, because if you can move between clusters, you can also move between clusters of different major versions, and we do that without downtime or like very, very minimal downtime. Also for like testing, blue-green deployments, these sort of things these are the functionality that is more attractive to larger companies.
Monica, you mentioned branching there for a second. I don't think we've talked about branching. Tell us what branching is and kind of the story behind that.
Yeah, so the idea was, this was kind of I think branching was one of the first functionality that we had in the company, and we were kind of inspired by GitHub. It said if you are branching, basically, if you are creating a pull request in your application, it will be really nice to have the schema changes that you do in your database associated with the change that you do in your application. And this was kind of the first functionality we have been building. And this is something we were dreaming kind of from the day one to build a nice developer workflow. And that's why we kind of decided to start the initiative of PG Roll, because imagine that you change your application and this change requires a change in your schema, and then it will be nice that when you want to merge this in production, you do this with zero downtime. So this is something that we have been working for over a year. Our solution is currently is not perfect, and we want to make it even perfect than that. So there are a few things that we want to be able to do in order to achieve this whole developer workflow.
So I have one last technical question. You mentioned, I think Tudor, you said, I think that your target for, I think it was free tier customers is $2. How do you keep that free tier economic? Because we've seen companies eliminate those as the environment has changed. So how does that work, and how do you all think about the free tier as a company? So I guess that's two questions. How do you keep it economic, and why do you keep it around is the other question.
And we're actually being quite open about it. We have a blog post published that actually goes into dollar amounts, like what cost us what and how. A lot of people found it quite interesting, so you can
we'll link that. That'll be in the show notes for anyone listening. We'll link that up.
Awesome. And the way our approach to doing it is by using shared clusters. So this is, like how you would do if you were to implement Notion or Airtable or something like this. So we use shared cluster and multi-tenancy inside the cluster. We have some guardrails in place to mitigate the noisy neighbor problem, because that's the main reason for which you wouldn't do this, because of the noisy neighbor problem. And there are also some security implications and such that we have to deal with. But the point is, we can put 2,000 free tier databases on the same Postgres cluster, which then the Postgres cluster can be relatively big, but still you divide the cost by 2,000. So that's how you get to, like $2 per free user or something like this. That's at a high level, that's it. The second part of the question is, why do we keep it and such? And it's to some degree it's our origin story, because this is the part that we are kind of missing, like when Monica was doing this non-profit and such. And we actually have quite a lot of non-profits in the meantime on the platform. So we definitely would want to disappoint them and so on. But to us, the more important thing is that we give people the occasion to test our platform for however long they want, play with it. A lot of developers use it for their personal project, and then they recommend it at work. So these are the benefits to the company.
It's also important to mention here that also comes with high availability. So basically, if you are a person that wants to have an idea and you are building an application around it, and then you can also run it in production for free. This was important for us, not only to support non-profit organizations, but also very, very small startups. And as they grow, we can grow with them. And, they can move to the pro plan, or they can move to a dedicated instance that we also provide. So this is something that I think it's unique with us, because in all the other platforms, you can... they don't really encourage you to run in production for free in a free tier plan.
Yeah, that
it's
is
typically only for development, right?
Yeah, because I think a lot of the other, to the extent that the other providers still have free plans, they're pretty hamstrung in that it's like, hey, you can use it, but it's going to go to sleep, and then it's going to take 10, 12, 30 seconds to wake back up or whatever. So you found that you can keep the economics economical, and that the funnel works. And so people are coming in, they're trying it, they're either growing themselves up to a paid plan, or they're recommending it inside a company that actually uses a paid plan. And so you find that this flywheel is pretty sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's
as long as we can keep the costs low, that makes sense to us. And then the technology that we have developed that is actually useful in a number of places. For example, that's the reason we did the moving of the databases from one cluster to another, because we needed. This is part of how we deal with noisy neighbors. We can isolate them.
You move them to a new neighborhood, and they're not quite as noisy then. Yeah.
Exactly. But also, when they upgrade to a pro plan and then they want to be on a dedicated cluster, we don't want to tell them, well, you have to recreate your database and move your data. Yeah. It's just a button in the UI, and we do that for them. And that type of, that building block is actually interesting at certain scale as well. And then if there's a company that has a microservices architecture, quite often they do this Postgres as a service internally, like they have their internal Postgres as a service, and then they can use data like that, and it comes with all this functionality, and that keeps for them the cost minimal, because the same economics that we have done for us, they are also valuable for a company that wants to do this.
Okay. And often this is a problem.
That's interesting that... No, please.
Often it's a problem, right? So if you have, let's say, a company of 1,000 developers, and then you need to provide, let's say, more than 500 Postgres instances for each of their teams, then it becomes very expensive. So that's why this is what Tudor mentioned, that it's economical if they use something like the same functionality that we have been building with Share Cluster.
Mm-hmm. And this is interesting because one of the things y'all keep mentioning is that some of the constraints or the realities of the free plan are driving engineering improvements or development improvements such that you can continue to offer that. And I think it's a nice way of framing it, because some people would say the free plan is costing us engineering resources. We had to invent this moving of a database thing because of the free plan, but it also turns out is quite useful for everyone else. And so that's a nice, I guess, flywheel again, that plan is spurring on some more engineering efforts there. Okay, so I have one last question for you. What is it like working as a husband and wife team? So you guys sit down for dinner. It's the end of the day. Y'all are in the same house, I presume, but separate rooms right now on this call, so that you don't echo over each other. So you sit down for dinner at the end of the day. Do you just talk about Xata all night, or what is it like working with your spouse on a company?
I think so we have a daughter, and she is now 10, and she used to be very I think starting with 5 years old, she was very strict, not work, please don't talk about work while we are spending the time together. So kind of she forced us in a way not to speak
good for her.
as much about work, but we really like kind of brainstorming together, and I think this is very powerful, that the benefits that we get by knowing each other very well is that feels like we are a really strong team, because we trust each other. We have been working for many, many years together. And I think it's really nice, the outcome that we get by brainstorming different ideas and different solutions together. And this is something that, you always say that companies are stronger when the founders know each other. Either they were colleagues or, they were sharing a dorm room while they were in university. I think this is really valuable. And I know that maybe what we have here is unique, right? Because not many couples are capable of working together. But I think it really works for us, because we also grew up together, and we kind of... we grew up together, and I think this was...
Wait, so how many years have you two known each other?
24. 24 years. No, for 24 years we are together. We know each other for longer than that.
That is wild. Yeah, this is very rare. This is extreme. I mean, just like working with your spouse or starting a company with your spouse is very rare, but knowing each other for that long and doing this many companies together, and that's very, very cool. So you guys have something special here, and I'm really excited for y'all. Is there anything
Thank you.
else you want to leave the people with? Where can we find you both online? And any last words before we wrap?
Yeah, so
Tudor?
we are Xata.io. Definitely check that out. Otherwise, we are both on X or Twitter. Um, I, yeah, I'm trying to spend less time there, but
Is
but
it
we are
working?
there.
Are you spending less time there? Because I'm not.
Yeah, the reason it's working for me is that I got a new phone and didn't install it on the phone.
That's smart.
At some point, probably I'll do it again.
You will.
But for the moment, I don't have it as an app, so it's only on the computer and on the website and such.
Perfect. So tell us
Yeah,
your
so
username on Twitter.
I'm Tudor_G.
Tudor_G. Okay. And Monica, where can the people find you?
So you can find me on Twitter and also LinkedIn. I'm not so active on Twitter. Maybe I should be more. I don't really find the time. It's a challenge. But I'm more active on LinkedIn, as silly as it sounds. But you can find my full name, Monica Sarbu, on both platforms. And definitely we are available on Discord and on Twitter. And feel free to send us your feedback if you have any idea of other features that you would like to see in Xata, or any feedback about the current features that we have in Xata. I would love to hear from you.
Wonderful. All right. We will leave links to all of that down in the show notes. And thank you both for doing this. First time we've had 2 guests and it was perfect. We'll never do it again because we can't top this, but this was a delight. So thank you both, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Aaron.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron.
Bye.